Commissioners, the following item is for 3 East 57th Street, the LP Hollander and Company Building, an individual landmark, docket number 161175, block 1293, lot 5. This is an application for a certificate of appropriateness. It's an Art Deco style retail building designed by Shreve, Lamb and Harmon and built in 1929-1930. Application is to install new storefront infill and alter the base of the building. This was read into the record on January 20th, 2015. Is being presented today for the first time.
Good morning, Commissioners. Tara Harrison, Preservation Staff. This is 3 East 57th Street, an individual landmark located on the north side of the street, just east of Fifth Avenue. The building was completed by 1930, and within 10 years, a major alteration was already done at the building's base, as you can see in the historic photo. The current black granite cladding and the storefront infill was installed just prior to designation in 2003. This application is to alter the window opening at the second floor, to install new storefront infill and cladding at the base. Loria from Atmosphere Design is here to present. Just introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Loria, the architect for the project. So the main thing I want to say before I get into this presentation is that there was a designation in 2003 that basically said that there was no historic fabric below this point right here. And it's on page 6 of that designation. It's important that I make that point. So what I want to point out is that in the original building, you will see that there are door entrances to the left and right, with an entrance close to the center. And the facade is flush with the building, engaging with the street and the retail environment. And then it changed to an all-white facade just 9 years later, and it stayed that way for quite some time. And that's important to note. Because in our current design proposal, we are proposing that the facade be white again, that the doors that were previously there in the original building are reintroduced in the same location, and that the facade be flush with the building as to create a better retail engagement with the street. And the white stone is similar to what was in 1940, and we feel that the white stone actually enhances the effect of keeping the Art Deco building up above highlighted. It's more engaging in the retail environment down below with the windows and facade flush with the building. We feel it has a lighter, gives the building a nice light base and highlights the upper level without distracting from it. In a lot of ways, I think the black didn't really do justice to the building. It was kind of a muddled entrance. It was very complicated. You see here all these void spaces, and these are display windows, they weren't doors. So we're introducing again the doors that were there originally, and creating this large retail window opening. And we have the doors here. Now, what we're also trying to do is maintain the same vertical lines of the building coming down. So we've positioned all the mullions in line with the vertical elements above. You can see here, all these lines are being carried down to the street in the vertical mullions, and we positioned the door also on that vertical mullion going through the center of the door. So we've tried to connect the retail portion of the building with the historic elements above. And really there's not too much more to talk about. That's a whole rendering of the building as it is. And you can see how the vertical elements coming down, the mullions are aligned above, and we've reintroduced those doors, and we have nice glass openings here and here. So it's lighter, it's brighter, it's more inviting, and it highlights the Art Deco building above, which is the historic material. That's important to note. Is there anything
Okay.
else we should add?
Are there any questions for the applicant? Fred?
Oh, go to this.
Okay, just
yeah,
comment,
okay.
okay.
There,
Yes.
I did want to point out, maybe you can help with this, maybe the material board that we submitted as well, what those materials are.
Hi, Lee Schindler from Atmosphere Design Group.
Top line.
Top one. Okay, great. So this is our storefront material, low iron glass, create maximum visibility into the retail environment. This is a white statuary marble that makes up the bulk of the facade finish that you're looking at. That material is actually integrated with the interior retail of the store, so there's a real distinct connection between the facade material and the interior that really is inviting when you're looking at it from the street. This polished stainless steel is typical of our window cladding, door frame cladding handles, things like that. And then this polished gold is the signage material.
Okay, and just, Roberta, you had a question, right?
Just the lettering, so the lettering is the same lettering you put back, or is it
This-
larger, lit? It's not.
It is not lit, and it is not an exact replacement of what's there. It's in compliance with the zoning, but basically it's new signage here, and you can see that we've proposed as well. So this is the new retail brand of Saint Laurent Paris. This is the historic logo, the Cassandra logo we refer to it as, and that is part of the facade as well.
Yes, Diana?
Yeah, I understand that it is, that you like the white section facade from some historic photos. The original building, though, when you say it does do justice to the Art Deco building, the original building was dark, though, completely, right? I mean, it was all, the historic photo is really shortly after it's built, so,
1931.
There's the original.
yeah.
Yeah, that dark stone was on the side.
So the designer didn't feel it was not respectful of the Art Deco design. I mean, I realize it's not historic fabric you're removing.
Right, and 9 years later, it changed all white, and
Yeah.
it stayed that way for 50 years. or
Yeah,
so.
so it's, and we do permit different storefronts and so on. So. Okay, but.
It just seems like a missed opportunity, really, where right now you have, can you show us a photograph of the existing? Right, here. This in some ways, and leaving aside the material, it reads better to what it was in 1930, not the 1940 picture. And it seems that changing it to this white material is kind of neither here nor there. It takes you to 1940s, but 1940s wasn't particularly good either for that matter.
However, the design of that facade is somewhat confusing and muddled. It's got a lot of disparate things happening that I don't think connect with the upper level very well, apart from the black. I understand
Right.
your point.
But couldn't you just, I mean, isn't there a way to sort of incorporate some parts of what would really bring this back to its original features, but still allow you to play around with whatever you want to within that? So
Well,
it's just
I
like
mean,
it's extending the frame or something.
Yeah, the original had the cornice. It looks, in any event, the bottom no longer relates to the top, correct? But that's because the bottom is all new work, So the original bottom did relate to the top.
Yeah, but architecturally, we've made improvements to that in terms of connecting architecturally. I think if your point is in
You have
regards
a
to-
new theory of how to connect the bottom.
Yeah, if you're talking about the color of the stone, that's one thing. But I think we are connecting architecturally to the building above.
Well,
This design, I don't think, does quite that well, apart from the color.
yeah, I think we would agree on that.
Yeah. Fred?
I just have kind of an overarching comment that the new design, to me, looks like it could be in a mall. And one could say, well, 57th Street's a mall, but I don't think it is. And I think I just find this to be highly generic. I thought the black was more elegant, even if it's unresolved in some parts. And I think it's I think this should be dark. I think you should, we're not going to replicate the original for sure. It's all changed, and times have changed too, and this is a storefront. But I think this is a very inappropriate way to think of this storefront, is my thought, and it should be kind of rethought, more integrated with the building above. And I can't imagine this generic white marble or granite, whatever it was, is appropriate here. That's just
Okay. Why don't we take testimony? Are there any questions right now? Okay. All right, just a matter. Why don't we just take testimony and we can come back to our comments. All right, Christabel Cupp.
Christabel Cupp for the Society for the Architecture of the City. Retail branding and historic preservation are sometimes in conflict if elements of a design of a storefront are to be repeated all over the world to create an immediately recognizable identity, routinely inserted into alien contexts. There is a new white marble Saint Laurent boutique in Los Angeles, in Beverly Hills, and now we are to receive ours. And unfortunately, in the case of the Hollander building, an individual landmark, it is incongruous. The original two-story Art Deco storefront was demolished barely a decade after it was built, and there's nothing left of it but the lovely photos shown here today. At least we know what it was. It is a sad commentary on our times that the man whose name will appear above the door at 3 East 57th Street was an enthusiast for old buildings and for Art Deco. He was a collector of Ruhlmann, Dunant, and Franck. His first New York boutique was at 855 Madison Avenue for 40 years, preserving an original storefront that was later red-coded for its significance when the Upper East Side Historic District was designated. One has to think he would have admired the Hollander building and adapted a new design to create modern harmony. The original stone here is black granite, according to the designation report. It is not highly polished, but creates a rich effect beside the cast aluminum decoration. Both the old building and the new storefront would benefit from an attempt to integrate the materials, to continue the original stone down and introduce some decorative metalwork into the composition. There is an opportunity here to do something new and outstanding. And I'd just like to add that I agree with the architect that the layout of his design coming to the street wall and bringing back some of the symmetry is an improvement, but not the color. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. The next speaker is Barbara Zay.
Barbara Zay of the Historic Districts Council. Though unfortunately lost, this building's original ornate bronze-framed storefront was one of the finest in the city. The present storefront leaves much to be desired, but it at least maintains and respects the color palette of the rest of the building. HDC finds the proposed design to stray too far from the storefront's intended contribution to the streetscape, taking the building in the wrong direction. We would much prefer to see a design that uses the original Art Deco storefront as inspiration, creating an elegant future by honoring its past. However, the proposal seeks to clad the storefront in a flat white marble, which would starkly contrast the dark palette of the floors above. At the very least, HDC would suggest that options be explored to keep the sides of the storefront a darker color, to maintain continuity from the upper floors to the base. It would be a shame for the building to lose its monumental verticality, a signature style for Shreve, Lamb, and Harmon. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more speakers? All right. Community Board 5 has sent in their resolution, and they recommend denial of the application with the note that the proposed facade drifts further from the original material and design, is inappropriate for an Art Deco building. All right. Any other questions for the applicant? I'm just going to, maybe you can come up, because some of the comments we've heard and what the other commissioners have expressed, it seems that this choice of material, we recognize the lower portion is not the historic fabric, but you're introducing this new storefront, and in some ways it doesn't, you said that you feel it connects to the old Art Deco. I don't see how it does that, and I don't know whether it would be helpful if you actually drew some cues from what was there originally.
Here's the thing. Sometimes when you try to connect to an Art Deco style without spending lavish money to create something that really connects to that language, it falls short. So the other way is to let it speak for itself and not detract from what it is, because if we were to bring down those mullions, for instance, that's not really what was there. I think the only issue I'm hearing mostly is it's the color,
Yes.
not the architectural design, because I think the architectural design is appropriate. I think the only issue I really hear right now is the color. Now, the problem is that the black is not doing anything for the retail business, the retail store. It's not working for us. The white has a lot more presence. It engages the street better. We feel that as a retail, it energizes the street. It gives a lot more presence to the brand. To go with the black is not, it doesn't stand out. If you walk past the building now, honestly, it kind of dies, in my opinion. It goes away. You don't even notice it. The white actually, as I stated, does provide a contrast to the upper building, and it allows that portion to speak for itself. Now, the other thing is, it was that way 9 years after that building was built. For 40, 50 years, it was white. It was almost identical to what we're proposing in terms of what it was. Now, I know that doesn't seem to hold much water, but if you see, that's exactly what was happening there. It was white all below and the Art Deco up above for a good 40 to 50 years. To
Right, so
suggest
it's-
that we're going to recreate the Art Deco of the past is not really appropriate, I don't think, to ask the client to do something like that.
Well, I think what you have is a situation right now which is better than what you're proposing, and it feels like this facade is just being kind of slapped on. And the argument that you're making is that the reason why it's appropriate is because the portion that's above it is all Art Deco and the portion below is not sure what, and that for a long period, from 1940 to for the next 50 years, it was already modified.
Mm-hmm.
But I just don't know whether that makes it appropriate to put something new, which it feels as disconnected from the building as it was during a period of time
So you're
in the
saying
past.
that the 100 years or so that it hasn't been an Art Deco facade doesn't count?
I think when you're asking us to look at this new design, and I think that it's a missed opportunity, and I don't think it improves from what the building is right now. Now, I understand from a retail perspective, the black doesn't work, but there could be elements where you could draw from what the original design was and incorporate it somewhat into this new facade.
Well, again,
And I don't know
wanna
what the
be-
answer is,
I
but
wanna be
I'm
specific
maybe
about-
responding sort of viscerally to this change.
I just want to be
Yeah.
specific about what you're saying, responding to the original design. Because are you saying that simply for the color, or are you also suggesting that some Art Deco elements be introduced?
Well, I think the color at least reflects some relationship between the base and the portion above that existed originally. So that break has an impact, and I think, yes, it was there for 50 years, and then it's become something else where the color actually sort of blends in better, even though it may not have all the elements of an Art Deco ground floor space. But I think that the color does have an effect that allows you to connect the base to the tower, which you could use. So at least that's in my opinion.
I understand.
Okay, other comments? Yes?
When I first looked at it, before I actually realized that it is an individual landmark, I thought that this was a new way to go, and that it's, didn't go this way. But it's almost like you're dividing dividing the building up and saying that the part that's important is the part that's up above, But that's the landmark part, and that this is something else and can be something different. While there are some situations where I think that the white could work, I think that because it's a landmark building and we want, I think, to look at the building as a whole, that the dark in this particular case does make a point in making it a whole, as opposed to looking at it as two separate ways. But I understand what you're saying in terms of selling, but I think in this case, it should be the dark.
Yes, Diana?
Okay, I just want to say, it's not about the 40 years of whether it was white or it wasn't white. It's about the comments that have been made around the table, which is that, is the storefront, does it seem appropriate to this individual landmark? Does it, enhance or at least well relate to it? And Commissioner Bland's remarks earlier that it seems rather bland, if I would say so. It had is this a mall-like character or something? It doesn't have any kind of distinctive relationship. It doesn't mean that it has to be a replication of the Art Deco design or anything of that sort. But we're looking at what's appropriate and does it relate well to the existing structure. There's a lot of diversity that we permit with storefronts, a very great deal. And this just doesn't seem to be enhancing the landmark. The color may be interfering with our vision of it, but I think it's about the general design. I mean, the two doors might be a good idea, for example, I mean, and I understand that there's some other vertical elements you're trying to relate. I think those things were good, and what other people think about, but it's not about having to, we're looking at the storefront de novo, just how does it relate to the individual landmark? That's how we're all looking at it. I just wanted for the benefit of the
Okay, yes.
You want to make a point?
Just real briefly, and maybe it's too late to just point this out. I know that Louis had used the word muddled, and I've spent a lot of time standing in front of this building looking at it. What happens with this existing marble, or it's granite, it is not a historic material. But what happens when you're standing there looking at it is that it's somewhat blurred the lines, and it actually, in my opinion, serves to detract from the beauty that is above.
Yeah.
So that was part of the thought process that we used because we obviously looked at the color black when we were, conceptualizing the design. That was kind of a no-brainer. But I just wanted to make that point. And along with that, what might not be readily apparent is that the entrance of this store is very much like a tunnel currently. So these walls that you're seeing around it immediately reduce down to this door, completely disengaging the interior of the store from the street. So that was something that was really important for us to achieve. You can actually see that in plan here. Now we've really engaged the sales floor, what's going on in the building, and what's happening for pedestrians on the street, which has some precedent as well with the original building when you read the designation report. So just a point I want to make.
I don't think anybody's complaining about the, replacing the design that's there now. That's not an issue.
Michael?
I find that the existing storefront actually, you're right, it's very recessive. It sinks back into the building. However, the visceral response to that then is that you notice that range of windows and what's going on above it more today than you do when you slap your veneer on the bottom. The other thing that has always troubled me about this building, well, the original, which looks like it was probably a nickel bronze articulated facade, had that wonderful spandrel between the upper edge of the facade and the range of windows. The limestone, that's not a 1940 photograph, by the way. There are fins on that Chevy. The 1940s facade, which was clearly limestone, depicted by the staining, was a buff color. Again, would not contrast with that upper range the way that this very white and actually a white marble that didn't really come into general use until the 1990s on things like Donald Trump buildings. He's brought this thing around. And so for me, there are two issues: the starkness of the white against that range, and the fact that it abuts very sharply the bottom edge of that range of central windows are two issues that I think need to be overcome.
All right, other comments? I'm sorry? You gave your comments. You know, I don't want to design this for you, and I think the commission can just give you suggestions, but I just go back to the historical photograph of what was there in 1930s, and I think the material, the black, you know, part of it is the color, at least is, I am responding to color, but the other thing is that the building is framed in a very different way than it's framed with all the alterations that's taken place. Right now, the color seems to let this whole thing sort of disappear. There's no framing. So before you'd have, I'm not sure what this material is. What is the original material above the black? Is it granite or?
Do you mean
It is granite.
It's granite, okay. So it seems like it's like a surround that continues and goes all the way down to the base. And is there a way of trying to at least capture that and give yourself a little more flexibility in what you want to do in the interior portion, and use your marble or use colors that may be more softer in palette, and then also find a way to transition that facade to what is
It's
above?
not that we hadn't thought of that, believe me. Part of the problem is if we talked about at one point bringing the black down
Right.
on the ends, but having just white here and here, then it would make no sense at all, because it would connect to nothing, it would have no relevance. So,
Well, it does mean that you change the dimensions of what's happening within that space.
architecturally, I don't think is the issue, I really don't, because I think if this whole facade was black right now, we wouldn't be discussing general design issues, because I think architecturally we've addressed the connections, because that was very important. When I saw how we were progressing with the design, it was very important that we make sure that all of the vertical elements transferred down. And we've done that. I honestly believe that the issue right here is the color of white as opposed to black. So we looked at taking the black down on the sides, but again, having white, which is really the brand wants to engage more. I mean, currently, what happens when you walk down that street, you really don't even notice the building that much. It seems kind of muddled in there. I mean, you don't engage that building with the upper portion. You engage it with the lower portion on a street level. That's where you engage it. You don't engage that upper building when you're walking by. And what happens, it just becomes this black, kind of muddled building. And you don't even realize there's a Saint Laurent store sitting there.
Right, I understand.
So our challenge is to try and create something that works with the brand and works with the building. So we did look at that, bringing the black down on both ends. But again, having the white stone in between that is even less connecting. Because now you've got, you have these bands of black coming down, and now it looks like you just threw these white stones in the middle so that you can have your brand image and the way...
Right, I think what I'm hearing is that the design problem is trying to do your brand image and somehow make that...
Exactly, connect.
Well, I think, and I'm not sure it's successful right now, so perhaps you need to...
I understand, and I can appreciate the arguments.
But I think for us, the brand design is really not our concern. That's your challenge.
I understand that too.
Right? So our concern is whatever storefront you have, it's not using the constraints of what your brand needs to do and what is done elsewhere, but it's about how this relates to the facade, which is the primary and only facade of this individual landmark. So it's quite important. So if you could, come back and perhaps rethink, be creative, but come back and at least speak to us more specifically about how the design is related to this landmark and its features. And I think at this point, it's not there.
So,
Yes,
just as
John,
a...
just one, yes, John?
Yeah, I just want to be clear that it's for me, it's more than just color, and I appreciate the verticality that's been incorporated and reinstalling the doors. But I think what strikes me is that and I would never ask you to recreate the Art Deco, but it's different, not just in color. It's that opportunity lost to deal with everything from texture to material to its. And for me, it's become very one-dimensional. And so it's more than just color, I think, that needs to be addressed. But as I said, I'm not asking you to recreate Art Deco. And oh, by the way, footnote, I think that's a 1960 Chevy in the 1940s picture. Yeah.
Exactly.
All right, any other comments? Okay, so maybe you can come back, right? So we will close the hearing.
Great.
That's a Bel Air.